For nearly 30 years, Hee Haw brought laughter and country charm into American homes with unforgettable characters and music. But behind the cheerful banter and hay bale sketches were real people whose lives often ended in heartbreak. Today, we revisit 11 of its most beloved stars, their triumphs, their personal battles, and the tragedies that claimed them far from the bright lights of the stage. Roy Clark as himself. Born April 15, 1933, Roy Linwood Clark was 36 years old when he stepped onto the stage of Hee Haw in 1969, quickly becoming its beating heart. His easy grin, nimble fingers, and endless charm transformed him into a country legend whose warmth reached beyond the television set. Millions felt like they truly knew Roy, whether he was picking the banjo, telling a joke, or introducing the next musical guest. Before Hee Haw, Roy had already built a name with hits like Yesterday When I Was Young and with awards including the Academy of Country Music's Entertainer of the Year. But fame had always carried a dark twin. Long before his TV stardom, Roy was fired by Jimmy Dean in 1957 for chronic lateness, a humiliating blow that shook his confidence. Those tendencies never entirely went away, and neither did a streak of rebellious pride that made him a challenging colleague. Though his second marriage to Barbara Ruppard lasted until his final breath, it was often marked by emotional distance, while his first marriage crumbled after just 3 years. Roy had 5 children, yet the demands of constant travel and the pressure to stay upbeat made him a stranger to his own family. By the late 1980s, heavy drinking became his way to silence what he called the noise of loneliness, and more than once he collapsed backstage while applause still rang out. Through it all, Roy kept performing, refusing to let the cracks show. But behind the bright lights, the price of being everyone's cheerful friend weighed heavily on his spirit. On November 15, 2018, pneumonia claimed Roy Clark at the age of 85, closing the book on a man who seemed made of pure sunshine, yet carried shadows no one could fully see. His estimated $10 million net worth could never measure the true cost of being America's smiling host. Grandpa Jones as himself. Louis Marshall Jones, lovingly known as Grandpa Jones, was born on October 20, 1913, and joined Hee Haw in 1969 at the age of 56. With his old-time banjo, yodeling breaks, and a grin that felt like a warm handshake, Grandpa Jones was the very spirit of rural Americana. The show needed someone who could be both a grandpa and a rascal, and Louis delivered that, week after week, until his presence became an anchor for the entire series. Beyond Hee Haw, he was a revered performer on the Grand Ole Opry and preserved the old-fashioned clawhammer banjo style through hits like Mountain Dew and Old Rattler, earning his place in the Country Music Hall of Fame. Off the stage, Grandpa's life was often more difficult than fans could ever imagine. Raised the youngest of 10 children in a struggling sharecropping family, he knew hunger and hardship before he ever held a banjo. Even after making it in the music world, money was sometimes tight, and he carried quiet anxieties about supporting his wife, Ramona Riggins, and their children. Their marriage was one of deep commitment, performing side by side, though it was tested by financial worries and Grandpa's tendency to slip into dark, silent moods. One moment changed him forever. In 1973, he was the person who discovered the brutal murder of his close friend David Stringbean Ackerman and Ackerman's wife, Estelle. That trauma etched itself on Grandpa's heart, stealing away some of the joy he'd shared with audiences. In his final years, Grandpa battled high blood pressure, vision loss, and a deepening depression that left him more withdrawn, though he kept performing until a pair of devastating strokes silenced him. On February 19, 1998, he died at age 84 in a Tennessee nursing home, with a net worth of about $2 million. A small sum for a man who had played for millions. Grandpa Jones will always be remembered for that mischievous sparkle in his eye, even though so much pain hid behind it. Buck Owens, as himself. Alvis Edgar Owens, Jr., known around the world as Buck Owens, was born on August 12, 1929, and was 40 years old when he first stepped onto the set of Hee Haw in 1969. As co-host, Buck's quick wit, trademark red, white, and blue guitar, and the raw power of the Bakersfield sound gave the show an edge that balanced perfectly with its corny jokes and rustic sketches. Already a towering figure in country music, thanks to chart-topping songs like Act Naturally and Together Again, Buck was celebrated for 21 #1 hits and a musical style that reshaped what country could sound like, turning him into a superstar before Hee Haw ever rolled its first camera. Yet the story behind his smile was never so simple. Buck's private world fell apart in 1974 when his best friend and musical partner, Don Rich, died tragically in a motorcycle accident. That day, Buck would later say, "The music inside him died too." From then on, he seemed to be performing through a haze, emotionally hollowed out, pushing through tours and television appearances almost on autopilot. Buck became short-tempered and guarded, driving away colleagues and losing friendships to suspicion and frustration. His personal life was equally rocky. He married 4 times, 3 ending in divorce, and 1 annulled in mere days, leaving him lonely in the very empire he had built. Though Hee Haw kept him in the public eye for nearly 2 decades, Buck turned his focus to business off-screen, purchasing radio stations and building Buck Owens Enterprises, a legacy worth around $100 million by the time of his death. But even a fortune couldn't restore the sense of joy that had died with Don. On March 25, 2006, Buck Owens passed away in his sleep after a heart attack, aged 76. For many fans, he was the unstoppable country rebel with a grin. For those closer to him, he was a man who lived in a world of silent heartbreak, trying to keep the music alive long after it had stopped playing in his own soul. Minnie Pearl as herself. Sarah Ophelia Colley Cannon, born on October 25, 1912, became Minnie Pearl in 1969 at the age of 57, stepping onto Hee Haw with a price tag dangling from her straw hat and a twinkle in her eye that would make audiences laugh for more than 2 decades. Minnie's famous greeting, "Howdy! I'm just so proud to be here," became a cherished American catchphrase, celebrating her playful, down-home spirit. Before Hee Haw, Sarah had already been a legend at the Grand Ole Opry, where she performed for decades and was admired for bringing authentic rural humor to a national stage. She also found time to appear in movies like Second Fiddle and Nashville Rebel, which helped cement her as country comedy royalty. But beyond the sweet comedic persona was a woman who quietly carried burdens that few fans ever guessed. Minnie's marriage to Henry Cannon seemed solid on the surface. He was her pilot, manager, and closest confidant. Yet their bond faced deep undercurrents of loneliness and unspoken distance. Minnie poured so much of herself into performing that she sometimes felt emotionally starved, unable to turn off the cheerful stage character even in private. The toughest battle of her life came in the early 1990s, when she was diagnosed with breast cancer and bravely underwent a double mastectomy. Her courage turned her into a national symbol of breast cancer awareness, and a treatment center bearing her name still stands today. In 1991, however, a severe stroke ended her ability to perform, leaving her to face quiet days in a nursing home. On March 4, 1996, Minnie Pearl passed away at age 83 after a second stroke, with an estimated net worth of about $5 million. Her gentle humor and fearless honesty broke barriers for women in country comedy, but the world rarely saw how much she sacrificed to keep smiling through it all. Junior samples as himself. Alvin samples. Junior, affectionately known to the world as Junior Samples, was born on August 10, 1926, and joined Hee Haw in 1969 at age 43. Before television came calling, Junior had lived a simple, working-class life, picking up carpentry jobs and driving race cars on dusty southern tracks just to make ends meet. Fate turned in his favor after a hilarious tall tale about catching a giant fish transformed him into a radio sensation, opening the door for a bigger stage on Hee Haw. There, he created the unforgettable BR 549 routine, a bumbling used car salesman sketch that brought audiences roaring with laughter week after week. Junior's slow-talking, good-hearted persona seemed tailor-made for Hee Haw's playful world, and fans loved him as a true representation of rural America. But the man behind the jokes was never as carefree as he seemed. Only finishing the 6th grade left him deeply self-conscious for the rest of his life, and the sudden fame of Hee Haw brought pressures he could barely manage. Though married to Grace Bolton and father of 5 children, Junior struggled to be present at home. Alcohol became a companion he could not shake, leading to bitter arguments, personal guilt, and a constant battle with shame that gnawed at him off camera. He worried about his weight, his skills, and whether people really respected him or just laughed at him. Those worries festered, even as the country celebrated his comedic genius. His charm hid a fragile heart that was rarely at peace. On November 13, 1983, Junior's heart gave out from a sudden attack when he was just 57, leaving behind about $1 million. A modest sum for a man whose name was known in every household. Junior Samples gave America belly laughs, but behind every grin was a quiet, wounded soul trying to believe he was enough. Stringbean as himself. David Ackerman, widely adored as Stringbean, was born on June 17, 1915, and stepped onto the set of Hee Haw in 1969 at age 54 with his trademark too-short pants, tall frame, and a banjo style straight from the hills of Kentucky. For decades before, he had been a Grand Ole Opry favorite, mixing old-school mountain music with a gentle humor that felt like a letter from home. His joyful stage act, built on country comedy sketches and endearing one-liners, made him one of the most recognizable faces on Hee Haw. Away from the cameras, Stringbean had performed with Bill Monroe and helped shape the early days of bluegrass, even appearing in country films like The Nashville Rebel. Yet behind the wide grin was a man shaped by the grinding poverty of the Great Depression. Terrified of losing everything, Stringbean refused to trust banks, hiding cash around his modest Tennessee cabin with his beloved wife Estelle Stanfill. That same caution made him wary of showbiz glitz, keeping life simple even while his name became famous. Sadly, it also made him a target. On November 10, 1973, after performing at the Grand Ole Opry, Stringbean and Estelle came home to 2 young thieves lying in wait. The moment he opened his door, Stringbean was shot and killed. Estelle murdered moments later while begging for mercy. The country music world was rocked by the news, especially Grandpa Jones, who discovered their bodies the next morning, a sight he never recovered from. Stringbean was 58 years old when his life was cut short, with an estate valued around $2 million, most of it stashed in walls and jars rather than banks. Fans still visit their resting place in Goodlettsville, Tennessee, bringing flowers and handwritten letters. They remember a gentle performer who offered laughter, only to be stolen away in a night of senseless violence that left a permanent scar on Hee Haw's legacy. George Lindsay as Goober Pyle. George Lindsay was born on December 17, 1928, and by the time he joined Hee Haw in 1971 at age 43, he was already a beloved figure thanks to his role as Goober Pyle on The Andy Griffith Show. With a dopey grin, mechanics overalls, and a goofy sense of wonder, George's Goober felt like the friendly neighbor everyone wished they had. His Hee Haw years cemented him as a comedic staple of American television, and he even took roles in big productions like Cannonball Run 2 and lent his voice to Disney's Robin Hood. Yet George's life off-screen was not the carefree romp his characters suggested. Struggling to manage his drinking, he often fell into patterns of self-sabotage, pushing away those who tried to help him. Rumors of angry outbursts and tension with co-stars occasionally made their way through Nashville's gossip circles, though he worked hard to protect his public reputation. His only marriage ended in heartbreak, and though he loved his children deeply, the touring and television schedules kept him from being as present as he wished. George's personal relationships were littered with misunderstandings and broken promises, a pattern he quietly regretted but rarely spoke about. As the years went on, the Goober persona became both a blessing and a curse, keeping George in the spotlight yet forcing him to live up to a cartoonish image while hiding more serious parts of himself. Health problems began to creep in during his 70s, and in his final years, he battled heart failure while reflecting on decades of work that left him both grateful and exhausted. On May 6, 2012, George Lindsay died at age 83, leaving behind an estate of about $500,000 and an enduring love from fans who still smile at the mention of Goober. His kindness on screen was genuine, even if behind the scenes he sometimes struggled to feel worthy of the laughter he inspired. Tammy Wynette as herself. Tammy Wynette, born May 5, 1942, was 27 when she appeared on Hee Haw as herself, the first lady of country music, after scoring #1 hits like Stand By Your Man and Divorce. She starred in The Johnny Cash Show and was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. Tammy's 5 marriages, especially the one with George Jones, were marked by heartbreak and rumors of controlling behavior and substance use. After repeated surgeries and painkiller dependency, her health declined. On April 6, 1998, she died at 55 of a blood clot in Nashville, with about $10 million in assets. Tammy's voice will forever echo with the strength she showed, even through unimaginable private pain. Loretta Lynn as herself. Loretta Webb Lynn, born April 14, 1932, was 37 when she first graced Hee Haw in 1969, bringing songs pulled from her raw Kentucky upbringing. Known for hits like Coal Miner's Daughter and You Ain't Woman Enough, and the biopic Coal Miner's Daughter, Loretta became a voice for working-class women. Married to Oliver Doolittle Lynn for 50 years, she endured betrayal and struggles with his drinking, yet never stopped performing. After a stroke in 2017, her health declined, though she still released music until her peaceful death on October 4, 2022, at age 90. Her fortune stood around $65 million, a testament to decades of courage and honesty in her lyrics. Buck Trent as himself. Buck Trent, born February 17, 1938, joined Hee Haw in 1974 at 36 with his dynamic banjo style. Known also for performing with Porter Wagoner and Dolly Parton, Buck made a mark with his bright, affable presence. Privately, however, Buck struggled with alcohol and gambling, which strained both his work and his marriages. Rumors of a fiery temper surrounded him even among friends. In his later years, Buck sought peace away from show business until he died on October 9, 2023, at 85, after wrestling for decades with personal regrets. His net worth was around $1.5 million, but his musical legacy remains priceless. Merle Haggard as himself. Merle Ronald Haggard, born April 6, 1937, first appeared on Hee Haw in the early 1970s in his 30s, carrying a hard-edged authenticity that came from a rough upbringing and prison time. Beyond the show, he was a giant of country with hits like Okie from Muskogee and Mama Tried, plus a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. Married 5 times with heartbreak woven through each, Merle also struggled with alcohol and cocaine addiction. Though he earned respect and millions, about $40 million by the end, he could never fully outrun the pain of his past. On April 6, 2016, his 79th birthday, Merle died of pneumonia complications, leaving behind a voice that gave dignity to broken souls. These 11 Hee Haw legends brought joy, music, and humor into millions of homes, leaving behind stories that still echo across the country landscape. Their struggles remind us that even the brightest performers can carry heavy burdens hidden behind the spotlights. As we celebrate their unforgettable legacy, may we also remember their courage, their resilience, and the humanity they shared with all of us. If you enjoyed this tribute, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Thank you for keeping their memory alive.